You ready to go?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to go.
Okay. Alright. See, now I gotta come up with a quippy way to, organically bring everything into motion here.
Oh, you don't have to try hard. Just treat me like your mother.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi. It is called Hey, Listen to This, and this podcast is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I'm the surprisingly really vocal right now, Ryan James Kearns.
You are vocal, and I appreciate that very much. I am the one, the only, the often disputed Matthew James Durzik.
And if this is your very first time listening into this podcast here, first of all, on behalf of me and Matt here, welcome. Second of all, like I said, it's called Hey, Listen to This, and what we do here is that every week we essentially take turns, picking albums that we're gonna dissect track by track, and the albums could be selected for a couple different reasons. One reason could be heck, it's a very popular album this year. B, it's a very classic album this year. Well, not this year, but I mean,
Of all time. It's a classic album.
Yeah. And then C, it's just an album that, I want the other person to enjoy. And D, chaos.
Yeah. And there's been some chaos over the episodes. I'm trying to think, what do you think was our most chaotic album that we reviewed?
In terms of, pure exploration, I would say it would probably be the Pink Tape.
Pink Tape? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's up there. I'd also throw... I think I might throw Peter Gabriel and the Mountain Goats in there as honorable mentions.
Yeah. But those came from at least the intent of, oh, hey, we wanted the other person to experience the album.
That's a good point. Whereas Pink Tape was just, more or less, hey, let's go down this avenue we've never gone down and see what comes out the other side.
We should do that more often, man.
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
So, last week, what did we do last week, by the way? I kind of forget.
The reason is because we covered 12 different bands last week, or technically 11, but we did The Turtles Present the Battle of the Bands, a very 1968 weird parody album that also sounds, at least to both of us, really good because basically the Turtles decided, hey, we're just going to be 12 different bands and see what comes out the other side. And I liked it a lot, and Ryan, I'm glad you did too.
Yeah, it was really impressive how the band was able to, really become a sonic chameleon where they were able to embody these different kind of styles, and there was a lot of good songs off of there. Some of the songs didn't land, but ultimately I give them credit for trying that because it shows that they stepped outside of their comfort zone, because if they really wanted to, they probably could have just made 12 Eleanors on that record and call it a day.
Yeah, or they could have cut 6 Eleanors and done a handful of classic standards, The Impossible Dream or Yesterday, whatever the case may be. But they didn't, and full credit to them for that. So now we are heading back into the JWM, the Jack White Multiverse, based on your recommendation for this week. And which album are we doing?
So, the album that we're going to do this week is by the band called The Dead Weather, and the album is called Horehound, released in 2009. It was their very first release that they did with the group. They have a total of 3 albums to date in terms of their studio catalog, with the next album that they made came right afterward in 2010 called Sea of Cowards, and then 2015 they came out with an album called Dodge and Burn. And it's interesting that, we went from, our first step into the Jack White Multiverse was the Raconteurs. Now we go to the Dead Weather, because they are two entirely they have similar members, but I feel the way that they approach songwriting and performances are two entirely different beasts. So, diving into a little bit about how the Dead Weather came to be. So, speaking about the Raconteurs, during a performance in Memphis, Tennessee, Jack White lost his voice, and the band asked Alison Mosshart of The Kills, with whom they were touring, to fill in on some songs. She sang lead vocals on Steady As She Goes and Salute Your Solution. White later asked her if she would record a song with him and Jack Lawrence, the guitarist that is in the Raconteurs, and actually is the guitarist in the Dead Weather.
Yeah.
So, and later on, they ended up performing more than one song that night when they went to the studio. And ultimately, the three of them decided to form a band, as Moss as the lead singer. Lawrence is actually on bass here, and then Dean Fertitta, probably butchering that name, is on guitar and keyboard, and White, of all people, Jack White, is on drums in this group here, which is a interesting change up. The reason why that they had that change up is that he rediscovered drumming after playing drums on the track Another Way to Die, which was used as a James Bond single with Alicia Keys that Jack White and Miss Keys did together. And he played drums as a child, and he really felt like playing lead guitar in another band would be too redundant, and he saw it as an opportunity to do something different. So yeah, that's a quick blurb on how the group came to be. And my history with the Dead Weather is that when this album came out, it became another cornerstone album for me, similar to Because of the Times by the Kings, by Kings of Leon, not by the Kings of Leon. And, over time, I don't know, I have a lot of respect for this album, but up until the point that I, put it up for offering for us to dissect, I really haven't been back to it since. And then I'm just going to say now, the rest of the catalog, when See It Cowards came out, I remember watching the live stream performance of that, and I thought it was a decent album. I still think it's a decent album, but I still feel like Horehound's a little bit of a stronger album. And then when Dodge and Burn came out, it basically did what it says. I dodged it and it burnt me.
Oh.
So that was a very poor joke, but it was one of those albums that listened to once, never really went back to until for the purposes of research for this review.
That's fair. First of all, before I get into my understanding of the Dead Weather, I had completely forgotten that Jack White and Alicia Keys did a song together for a James Bond movie. 2007/8/9 was a different time. But my understanding and my learning of the Dead Weather is a little different, because around the time that this album came out, I sort of had a vague idea of who Jack White was, but at the same time, I had started getting back into, or really not even back into, but more into reading Rolling Stone magazine, because at the time, when I was in high school, I was the equipment manager for the Beaver Falls boys basketball team, and the head coach of that team, Doug Biega, I guess he had a subscription to Rolling Stone that he really wasn't using, so he was just like, hey, you like rock and roll music? I was like, yeah. I was like, you want to read some of these? I'm not reading them. I was like, sure. And I came across a bunch of different artists and songs I had never heard before, and this band was one of them. And I remember reading articles about these guys being hyped up as the next super group, which sure, it's kind of hard to especially around 2009. It definitely felt like I was on sort of the back end of rock sort of semi-descent into sort of its own niche. 2004, 2005 were sort of the last bastions of rock being super popular. And it was sort of right before the indie explosion that sort of brought back a little bit. But even then, Rolling Stone being Rolling Stone, they were still acting like it was, the 70s, just these rock acts are the new supergroups. This is the new this is the new that. And there were some good songs that came out of there that I remember liking and still such as Golden Age by TV on the Radio, I'm Amazed by My Morning Jacket. I really need to revisit that song. And one song off this album, which I remember listening to, which was Hang You From the Heavens. So that's pretty much where my knowledge of the Dead Weather began and then essentially stopped. And I really had not revisited them at all until, again, this review. So that's my experience with the Dead Weather.
Oh, all right, so ready to get at her, man?
I
feel like we're ready to experience some Dead Weather.
I think we're ready to experience some Dead Weather. Very appropriate that this review comes at a time it is, because it has not rained for shit for like a week in this city. I was watching the news today. It was like drought has been going for like 5 days. Like, come on.
One could ask, will there be enough water?
And welcome. No, I'm just kidding.
So, I'll kick her off here. So, the opening track, it's called 60 Feet Tall. And when before I dug into this album for this review here, when it came to this track, I thought it was more of an intro that kind of bled into the next track, which is Hanging from the Heavens. And dude, I'm wrong. Like, this track here, while it does do a fantastic job opening up the whole album, and it does feel kind of like an introduction, it is a good enough track on its own to stand on its own 2 feet, almost 60 feet tall, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And right away, the thing that really got me hooked on this track here, and it's what the Dead Weather does as a group that makes this album so intriguing for me. Spoiler alert, I have a top 3 but a bottom nothing. So
okay.
Yeah, so hint hint, we'll see what that means. Last time that meant nothing.
That's true.
So the groove right away, where it just starts out with that bare acoustic. It's a twangy kind of groove, and then you get Alison's vocals coming in, especially in the beginning when it's just her voice, and you get that acoustic guitar twang along with Jack White just smacking the downbeat on that bass drum. She's singing about needing this love, and this love is so bad, but she knows that she can handle it because she feels like she's 60 feet tall. And the way that this song just develops and just that groove expands into a full-on jam session, dude, I'm here for it all day. It's structured so well. And one of my favorite sets of lyrics, it really does exemplify Alison's confidence in dealing with this toxic kind of love, is, I know it ain't easy, I must tap your evil well, 'cause boy, you come roaring like a bat out of hell, you drive me so reckless, you'll kill us all. I love that set of lyrics. Now, is it a perfect coherently written kind of set of lyrics? I don't believe so. And that, in my mind, I don't care, because this song fucking rules, and it is my third favorite song on the album, right out of the gate.
Well, this is going to be an interesting review, because right out of the gate we have my third least favorite song on this album. And and full disclosure, I do have a top 3 and a bottom 3. I will say, I will agree with you on some things. I do like her vocals on this a lot as well. I do believe Alison Mosshart is really doing a great job throughout the majority of this album, if not the entirety. And I do like whenever the track does groove, particularly when it gets to the because basically what this song is a sort of weird blues in a sense. It's not like a traditional blues, but it definitely has sort of that chord structure, especially how it finishes off when she's claiming that she's 60 feet tall. But if I'm being honest, what turned me off about the song is the sort of inconsistent flow of it. I know you talk about the intro being sort of this, warm-up type of vibe to it. And then after the first chorus, it just kind of dies down and sort of slowly builds back up. And I'm just kind of and again, I think the problem I have sort of comes from a bias of appreciations of other tracks on this album where I kind of expect that big sound, that big groove, and it comes in parts on this song, but not enough for me to really appreciate it. I was gonna have it at the very bottom at the start, and then I listened to it again. I was like, actually, this song's not that bad. It's a good song. Like, it's a good song, but for an opener track, and especially compared to some of the other songs that we're gonna get to, does kind of float towards the bottom. So yeah, third least favorite song for me, but not terrible.
I can kind of get that. Again, like, I'm coming from the standpoint of, like, very much of being a Jack White fanboy. But, like, even with this kind of track here, like, it's very much not a Jack White kind of track. And the way that the band approaches the songwriting within this album, it's more of a loose kind of form where they'll just cut things. They'll, like, the whole album was written and recorded in 21 days. So it was pretty fast, and it just seemed like, from what I was able to, like, research, is that the band just played off of one another, and they allowed, like, the little mistakes to kind of bleed on through. Like, I can see your argument with how the opening track here is a little bit inconsistent. So I respect that. I'm always a sucker for, like, songs like this, and it didn't, like, the inconsistency didn't bother me nearly as much, but totally respecting your opinion, man.
Yeah, I forget which episode it was. It was a couple weeks back where we were talking about, I want to say it was the Metallica episode, where we talked about how, you tend to be a sucker for songs that just kind of come to a full stop and then get right back in. It was Sad But True. That was the song we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about how I wasn't such a huge fan of that. I think this is another example of that.
That is true, man. That is true. All right, so are you ready to hang me from the heavens?
I am ready to hang you from the heavens. This track, now I'm just going to come out and say this is my favorite song on the album, which granted, after 15 years is, a bit of a sort of a disappointment, but at the same time, listening to it, it's just got everything, man. It's a monster groove, and it's not just Jack White doing such a great job on the drums on the song, which he does. Like, he doesn't, like, get flashy or, try to be Buddy Rich or Mike Portnoy or Neil Peart. Like, no, he just puts in a groove and lets the rest of the band do what they have to. The guitar and bass are perfect. Locking in with him, just creating this, like, just bashing in your head type of groove throughout the song. And Alison Mosshart, her vocals are fantastic throughout the song. I think the lyrics here are probably some of the best on the album. I love how it sort of switches from, I'm walking away now, one step forward, back two, and then later on it's one step forward, back three. Like just those little details in the lyrics, which granted aren't like, Bob Dylan or Joni Mitchell-esque, but at the same time, they are pretty solid in themselves. The way that the drum solo, quote unquote, before the guitar solo, just sort of, it almost feels like it is the moment where Mosshart is dragging whoever it is up to the heavens or down to the devil, just sort of that trip through the abyss, and then just that bam, like guitar solo that was very reminiscent of almost like a Tom Morello type. It's sort of Jack White-ish too. I just love this song so much, and easily my number one song on the album.
This song could have easily popped into my top three. I think. So with 60 Feet Tall, I love the way that it was recorded. Shout out to Vance Powell, who was the engineer on this album. He does a fantastic job, like, recording everything here. And there's one track later on that's one of my favorites that I will exemplify, like, how well it's recorded. And this song was just missing maybe that one little thing to really just knock one of my top three out of there. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, that's not taking any goddamn thing away from this track here. So, like, your imagery of, in the drum solo, of how, like, okay, this is actually Alison, taking this one person and grabbing them by the hair and, like, hanging them up from the heavens or selling them off to the devil. Like, it's gonna forever change the way that I approach this track, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And you talk about, like, change up in lyrics. One thing that I really did love in terms of, like, the progression is you get lyrics of, like, I like to grab you by the hair and hang you up from the heavens. Later on, you get that refrain, I like to grab you by the hair and drag you to the devil. And then it ultimately goes to, I like to grab you by the hair and sell you off to the devil. Yeah. Like, I like that, man. I like that. And it almost seems like, lyrically, that this track here can almost be a sequel to, like, the opening track, because you kind of get that, like, hey, this is a toxic love, but I feel like I can handle you because I'm so fucking tall. And now you get into, like, the actual meat and potatoes about the relationship, and now it's just like, oh, yeah, no, fuck this, man.
Nope, we're done. Off you go. You go into the ether. Bye-bye forever.
And, like, other things that I really did appreciate about this track here is that the way that the band kind of grooves to, like, the ends of phrases, and accompanied with Alison singing, like, I like to grab you by the hair, it's so good. And just how it just seems that the band does take such good care in crafting moments of, like, in your face rock music in this track here, and then they allow other moments to breathe, only to smack you right back into the face. So, like, this track rules, man.
It really does. And I've appreciated it for as long as I've known it, and again, that's been the better part of 15 years. So yeah, I really don't have any other notes aside from that second sort of drum solo that Jack does towards the end of the song, where again, it's not really a solo so much, just more of a, I'm pretty sure it's double tracked, where it's just the main groove and then he just does a little bit of riffing on top of that. I mean, if he did it all on one take, much more kudos, but if it was double tracked, I don't care, it rules. On the way it leads into that final verse, it's just, again, no notes. This song is awesome.
So, pivoting over to I Cut Like a Buffalo. So, this is a song that I kind of actually maybe struggled with a little bit. It could have popped into a bottom, like, being my least favorite kind of track here. But, ultimately, I will start by saying, like, the reason why it kind of could fall down in terms of, like, my favoritism and ratings on the tracks here is that the groove it feels like this song is just a little bit too long, in my opinion. Like, the groove kind of wears on you, and there's not enough sonic diversity, and they don't do enough with the track to make it stand out. However, after multiple listens, I think I listened to this track here this album 4 times, not this track here 4 times. Well, I guess technically I did. I digress. But, like, I grew to appreciate what this track had to bring to the table. The way that the main groove is just laid so patiently, and it drives the whole track, along with, like, Jack just, jumping in there with, like, random phrases of, like, you can hit me if you want to, do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
And it's good, but one thing that kind of really does prevent me from putting I Cut Like a Buffalo into, like, anything lower than, like, just what I would consider to be a great track on the album is the moments that you hear in the background where it almost seems like someone's just, like, kind of trying to scream. It's just, like, something with their throats going on. And this really, like, that whole moment comes together with lyrics that read, you cut a record on my throat, but the record's not broken. And then you get Jack asking, is that you choking? Yeah. So, like, it almost sounds like someone's choking in the background. So, like, I like it. I can understand why a lot of people would not be, like, a fan of this track here, because it can wear on you. But after hearing about how the band approached, like, the recording and the writing of this album here, I kind of gave it, like, a little bit of a pass. But yeah, it's a very complicated song for me.
I like it a little bit more than you. Not so much that's in my top 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little on the weird side, I will say. The groove, I do like the groove throughout the song. It's sort of a reggae adjacent, as much as a hard rock band could do reggae. And I think the vocals are fine. They're a little weirdly produced, not as weird as some songs we'll get to. And yeah, I can't really say much about the lyrics that you haven't already said because, like we talked about during the Raconteurs episode, there is a lot of times, especially with Jack White songs, where the lyrics are very vibey and they just sort of come together to flow the song. And I feel like this is probably the best example of that on the album. Like, it's pretty cut and dry, just sort of, a song about, this person being scorned, and it kind of does continue that theme-ish of the first two tracks of love gone wrong, or sort of love mixed with cockiness or something like that. Not obviously as much as Hang You Up From the Heavens did with the previous track, but this one does sort of fit in that vein. Again, it's a weird track. I like it though, don't love it, so yeah.
I'm glad that we kind of landed like around like the same feelings here. Like like ultimately, I agree with you, man. So, I feel like it's time to pivot over to the next track here.
Yes, the next track, which is the fourth track on the album, called "So Far From Your Weapon," and this song, after much deliberation, I have come to the conclusion that this is my least favorite song on the album.
Tell me why.
There's really nothing there. It's like to me, this is like the nothingest of nothing burgers. Like, just thinking like back to the album, because literally, like, full disclosure, I've listened to this album twice today, and the last time was right before I got here. I drove from the place where I got my tires to this house, and I was like, even like in like the 20 minutes following the song, I still couldn't like remember anything about it. And I had to like think hard about what the song was. Like, I remember there was like a half decent groove and like some chanting at the end of, I don't even remember what the words were, but I know they're all singing it together. Yeah, like, it's just, especially after I cut like a buffalo, like this track sort of goes back into like normalcy mode, but like pushes that button way too hard to the point where I'm just like, I mean, it's not a horrible song by any means. Like, it's not like a bad song. Like, again, if you're just listening to this album like in the background, you won't find anything that's just like, hey, wait a minute, this is offensive to me. But at the same time, there's nothing that jumps out the speakers. I mean, Alison sings fine. The groove is okay. Kind of gets off to a slow start like 60 Feet Tall did. But yeah, I'm just, again, I really have nothing else to say about this song other than, like, it is forgettable.
The reason why it's not forgettable for me, this song's not in my top three. But,
Okay.
And I would put it on the same playing field as, like, I Cut Like a Buffalo, where, like, for me, there's tiers in this album where you get the great tracks, you get the amazing tracks, and then you get like the top three tracks for me. This song here falls in the great territory, like in terms of like just a base level track for me.
Yeah.
And what really sold me on this song here is Alison singing and her lyrics, dude. It like the way that the opening set of lyrics that are delivered, which are, there's a bullet in my pocket burning a hole, you're so far from your weapon and the place you were born. Like, the way that everything's kind of like accompanied sonically along with the way that Alison's laying down those lyrics are so good. You can almost just, you can really just sink your fangs, your teeth into like the feelings and like the what the song is bringing to the table. I would agree with you and understand on how the song is entirely forgettable in terms of like there's not really a whole lot here other than that slow simmer and Alison delivering like, you know, amazing lyrics and like her vocal delivery is so fucking good. Like the chant section that you mentioned, it goes, you want to get up, let go, I say no. Right. And it just overall though, like I think that was the main thing that kind of drove me to this song. Also, love these this set of lyrics, which are, you dream of seeing fire in them hills, but you better wipe that smile from your lips, which one of us will be the one to go? And again, it kind of could allude into like this toxic kind of love that we've talked about for like a lot of the album so far, and this is almost getting to the point of like that other person across from that table from you in terms of that relationship. It's starting to like turn into like a almost kind of like a murdery kind of situation here. And overall though, I did dig the song. I can completely understand on how you feel with this song here being completely forgettable. I think it might be due to like my relationship with this album here that helped me remember it a little bit better.
Yeah, and again, this was a tough choice as far as like my bottom, because it was between this and another track, and I had to come to the conclusion that boring and forgettable is slightly worse than badly executed, which we'll get to.
So, I'm curious to see what that is.
I'm curious too, because I will say the chances of us fighting are probably less or slightly higher than 0 at this point. but I am hoping that it doesn't come to that. I don't think it will.
Okay. So, ready for me to talk about the next track here?
Yes, the next track is "Treat Me Like Your Mother."
This song rules so fucking much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No notes. You So, yeah, just the way that this song just fucking slaps. I think I dropped so many F-bombs in this review so far.
Yeah.
I love it. But the groove of the performance here is just so infectious. The guitar tones and the drum performances, they're just so good. And just a way that everything kind of just grooves together. It lines up so well. Alison's performance, again, is so good. Like, you get the lyrics of, "Come on, look me in the eye. You want to try to tell a lie. I bet you can't, and you know why. I'm just like your mother." And it really makes you, like, believe that she's really embodying the character of this sick, toxic love that has been explored throughout the album so far. And it just, the way that everything just lines up so well together, it's so disgustingly beautiful. Like the breakdown at the end where they are essentially spelling out manipulate, and like after they get done chanting that out, they chant out, "Am I too? Am I late?" Like, that is just amazing. It doesn't get any better on this album than that. And also the section where they're singing, "Who's got to figure it out? Left, right, got to figure it out." Like, whew, it's so good, man. Like, just, this song is the embodiment of what a great rock song is. And it's easily my favorite Dead Weather song, and it's easily my favorite song on the album.
So we are not fighting. That is good news.
Thank God.
Actually, I probably feel about this song the way you felt about my favorite song on this album, which is "Hanging from the Heavens," which is, it just barely missed the top 3 for me. Yeah. Because this song is really good, like you said. I love the groove right out of the gate. Again, it just blasts out of your speakers perfectly. And I agree that not only does Alison sound really good on this song, but I would say Jack does too, and I love the interplay between them.
Yeah.
It does sound like they're having like a conversation, and again, like almost reminds you of sort of those like old country duets, kind of like with Loretta Lynn and Conway Twitty on songs like, "You're the Reason Our Kids Are Ugly." But I will say that I'm not as high on that bridge as you are, which I'm glad you explained that, because that does bump it up a little bit for me. But again, I feel like, again, much like with "Hanging Over the Heavens," I was, expecting more of a consistent track that, didn't sort of wheeled off into a different direction. And I feel like that just veered off a little too much for me. Not for me to hate it by any means. Like, if we were ranking this album proper 1 through 11, I'd probably have this at number 4. So just right outside the top 3. But yeah, no, it rocks, dude. And I completely understand why you have it at number 1.
One of my favorite memories that I've had playing Rock Band in high school is doing this song.
Oh, yeah?
Like it absolutely rips. And if you are able to like do the vocals or any other like instrumentation on there, it just works out so well. So I think that's what also did elevate it to a new level for me. I think before I really fell in love with this song, I think "Hanging from the Heavens" was like my favorite track on the album. Both are really great tracks, like, not taking anything away from either one. Like, it's like, what flavor do you like more, vanilla or chocolate?
Yeah.
Like,
There's not a wrong answer there.
the wrong answer is vegan, soy, vanilla.
Vegan soy vanilla.
So, speaking about vegan, soy, vanilla, are you ready to talk about Rocking Horse?
I was about to say, where the hell are you going with that? And apparently the answer was nowhere. I appreciate that. Yeah, Rocking Horse, I kind of almost have the same feeling about it as I do as So Far From Your Weapon, except not nearly as negative. For whatever reason, like, this song, I feel like has a much better groove and sort of is, not as much of a come down as the So Far From Your Weapon was. I pretty much like the groove on it. I think it sort of is what that song should have been. Alison sings well. Jack does a really good job. I think that's something that gets a little lost in this, is that Jack White is pretty damn good on the drums throughout this album. Like, he doesn't, like, again, get flashy or choppy, but again, he just puts the groove down and sort of lets the rest of the band do their job, and the rest of the band does their job very, very well. But aside from that, really not a whole lot to talk about for me on my end with this song. It's solid. I liked it a decent bit, but it's not in my top 3 nor my bottom 3.
So this track here does land in the tier of great songs for me, where like it does enough to like not really bring down the album as a whole, and it really kind of like it's a great song, but it's just kind of there, to be real with you. I mean, the thing that I was mainly attracted to with this song here is just the overall feel of it. Like, you get lyrics of how Jack's singing about, and then I wrote a nasty letter and I sent it to the Lord, and I said, don't you dare come and bother me no more. And like, just the overall like nasty kind of feeling that you get from it. Like, it's really nice. It's kind of cool. And the Western guitars are a nice touch here, and the way that the track kind of just pops up in random moments with the like, the O's, like, it touched the millennial sense in me of loving O's in tracks.
Oh, God.
Overall, though, like, another thing that I was just thinking about with this track here is that, and this track works so well in the sequencing aspect with the next track called New Pony, because you think about like the concept of a rocking horse, and like this is exemplified in the lyrics. So yes, but this old rocking horse just nods his head, and he's gonna rock back and forth the way that he always did. And I like, this is one thing I liked about like the way that I was able to research this review. It was mainly me just playing around with the thoughts in my head, because sometimes I just go off of what Genius just says. But for me, like, you think about the concept of a rocking horse. Like, a child goes up to a rocking horse and they rock back and forth. That rocking horse just sits there for an intended purpose. It will not do anything else unless somebody actually engages with it. And maybe it's just like, a play on the notion of like, somebody who's just kind of stuck in their own way, or somebody who's just like, if we're talking about like toxic love, which is we have explored so much in the lyrics and like the overall feel on this album so far. Like, you think about like a relationship where like this other party is just doing what that other person's asking for and doesn't really do anything outside of that. Like, it's just an interesting thought that I had.
It is an interesting thought, and I'm always great for songs that make you think. This one didn't quite do that for me, but I think the metaphor that you brought up is a very good explanation of what the song is. And like you said, I do agree that it does play well into the next track, which is New Pony.
So before we go over to New Pony, Matt, I got a question for you.
What's that?
So if somebody's listening to us right now and they really like what they hear, like if they really want to support us, what's the best way that they can support us?
Well, the best way they can support us is by following us on our socials, whether it's TT Hey Listen on Twitter or on our Facebook page at Hey Listen to This, or any of our other platforms, which are Instagram, Blue Sky,
Threads.
Threads.
Yes.
Not Blue Sky.
Yeah, everybody forgets about Threads.
Yeah, Threads.
Remember Threads?
Remember Jet? But just follow us on our socials. Also, we have a YouTube page where we post our episodes weekly. So if you like to, just put YouTube on in the background, or maybe you're stuck on, a 2-hour flight to Dallas or whatever the case may be, just go to our YouTube page, like and subscribe, and leave a comment or two. Tell us what we did right, tell us what we did wrong. Just follow us on socials as best you can. Also, we have a email, tthalisten@gmail.com, if you want to leave a compliment or, some criticism, or hell, even suggest a future episode. You might even be the guest on it. We don't know.
We always like making new friends, man.
We always like making new friends.
Yeah, within reason. So, like, if you're going to come out of left field and be like, hey, you need to review a Hungarian choral choir, album, no.
Well, if you have to take a week off, I might do that one.
All right, so pivoting over to New Pony. So, you know what I discovered about New Pony, man?
What's that?
It's actually a Bob Dylan song.
Is it really?
Yeah. So this is a Bob Dylan cover, and it's an interesting thing. Like, you think about, how, again, I didn't listen to the original song for the purposes of this review, but it's just the way that the band does approach it here, where they use such new instrumentation, covering an old song and bringing new life to it. It's a really nice touch. The performances here are crazy good. This track here, for those of you who are wondering what tier it lands in my racking and sacking of the tracks here, this lands in the amazing tracks here. And it's basically because of just the performances. Like I said, they're crazy good. The band really does do a great job diving into that blues rock feel. And the shouts of how much longer, they are a nice, it almost acts like I don't want to say a grounding moment in the track, but it's definitely, it drives home the feel a little bit well, and especially with Alison's her vocal performance. I feel like I've basically complimented Alison on every single track here.
Right, and deservedly so. She has sounded good on every track so far.
But the way that she's laying down the lyrics and the vocals on this track here, especially with the lyrics, "Come over here, pony, I want to climb up one time on you. You're so nasty and you're so bad, but I said I love you. Yes, I do." It just brings it over the edge for me. It's so good. And the main focus of the song starting out is that groove that the backing band lays down, and man, it is tight with a purpose. I love dun 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 dun, and just another thing that I'm gonna compliment Vance Powell on, and the way that he recorded this album, is just the drums. They're bare bones in a fashion that you can hear everything pretty cleanly, and I did appreciate that. And even with the lyrics opening up the track with "I had a pony, her name was Lucifer," and you think about that concept, contrasting it with Rocking Horse, and how it seems like Alison's embracing this concept of riding Lucifer and climbing on top of him, and because he's so
or her
you're so, because they are so nasty and they're so bad. She really wants to embrace like the darkness and everything like that. And as compared to Rocking Horse, where it's just like, hey, you're gonna just do the same thing in and out. It was a nice moment for me, and yeah, doesn't crack my top three, kind of like how I alluded to, but it's a really great song nonetheless. A really great cover as well.
So I'm right there with you, except for the fact that it did land in my top three. In fact, it landed at number 2 for me.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's even a little higher now that I know sort of the weird, again, because especially considering Alison singing these lyrics, which again, I did not realize that Bob Dylan wrote them. And even as you were saying them out loud, I still couldn't believe it was Bob Dylan. Like, this does not sound like something he, is set to sing, because they are obviously... could be taken very sexually. But at the same time, because Alison's singing them, it does sort of add this new dimension of, going from this sort of rocking horse of, this guy in everyday life, and, he's not really doing anything to, ooh, this pony, her name is Lucifer, and I can ride her instead, And there's a lot of undertones that, you could probably make with that we will not get into right now. The main reason this song is at number 2 for me, because, like you said, it rocks like hell, man. Like, that opening groove is magnificent. Like, it's almost, like, on the level of, like, a Led Zeppelin almost. And it's actually good that you talk about how well the drums are produced, because that's, again, sort of what Jimmy Page pioneered with the sound of John Bonham's drums, just making them sound as full and as big and as monstrous as humanly possible. And I feel like that is achieved here with a T, like you said. And what puts this above Treat Me Like Your Mother for me is the fact that it gets that groove and it just locks it in. It does not move. And it just, again, really adds to the strength of the song through in and throughout. That, again, those chants of how long are a nice little touch at the end of the track. It's a really, really good track on this album. Again, rocks really well. Guitar sound great. Alison sounds great. Jack sounds really, really great. And yeah, number 2 for me.
So I'm fact checking myself here. It still is a Bob Dylan cover, but they took some liberties with some of the lyrics at the end. So, like, you don't get to hear Bob Dylan saying, hey, I want to climb up on top of you. You're so big and you're so nasty. Like,
Bob, by the off chance you're listening to this, we have a challenge for you. These lyrics that this guy's mentioning over here, that the Dead Weather may have taken liberties with and made a little bit more graphic than they were. If you want to try those out, feel free.
Bob Dylan ends up covering a song of a cover of his own song.
It sounds ridiculous. It also sounds like exactly the thing that Bob Dylan would do.
I absolutely love it. And I'm also going to fact check me with something else. That guitar line that I was talking about, like, dun, 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 it's not on this track. It's on the next track, so... Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I've sinned.
Honestly... nice foreshadowing there. No, I'm glad you fact check yourself, because especially in this day and age, that is a level of nobility that even our highest leaders cannot attain to. They have to be fact checked instead. They can't fact check themselves. That being said, moving on to our next song, which is Bonehouse. And Bonehouse, this song starts with a weird, almost seems like a computerized groove, like almost like a sampling machine made it, which I don't really have anything against. Like it very much came across me sort of Wilco-esque. Like, this is something they would have done on like Heavy Metal Drummer or something like that. Which, by the way, if you haven't listened to that episode, go check that out. Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, just revisited that album about a week ago. Great. Aside from that, and then once it gets out of that weird sort of like almost spacey intro of like the guitar being like, it again just locks in this really nice groove that kind of takes a bit of a different way about it. Like, if the Prototype was So Far From Your Weapon and the 2.0 was Rocking Horse, this is the 3.0, and this is where they get it right. Like, they just lock into this groove. Alison sounds great, talking about, wanting to make a house from your bones, and again, keeping up that vibe of, making it so, she really wants to know how she feels about you, and, just saying, hey, I just want to make a house out of your bones, which there's really not much context you can add to that other than, he's like, oh, maybe with, built on your back, we could make something life together, but something more wholesome. But I doubt that's what they were going for. But no, I like this song a lot, and we have reached the end of our top 3. This is at number 3 for me.
I can totally respect that, and I'm gonna just say, like, the opening portion where, like what I alluded to, what I thought was in the previous track, but it's actually in this track here. I absolutely love it, man. It's so hypnotic that it's crazy. And after they get out of that, it's still pretty good with how, like, the track grooves, like you mentioned. Alison's vocal delivery, again, is really great, like you said. The drum performance is great. It's fantastic as well. And the guitar solo is great here. And, like, it's interesting that I'm trying to create, like, a narrative through line of, like, how some songs, like, interact with each other. And you think about, like, New Pony and, like, how Alison is, like, embracing Lucifer and, like, this dark side of her. Maybe this track is kind of, like, from Lucifer's perspective with lyrics of, like, I always get the things that I want. And it's just an interesting concept to build around. I know that for a lot of the Raconteurs episode that we did, that we basically admitted to the fact that, like, there wasn't really much in terms of, like, Jack's lyrics, but when it came to lyric writing in this album, Alison did a lot of the lyricism here, and it shows. Like, some of the stuff doesn't coherently land, but it's nice just kind of sinking your teeth into it and, like, trying to dig out meaning. But overall, though, like, Bonehouse, solid track, solid groove. Not much else to be really said about it other than what we just said. So I think it's time for us to head into the home stretch here. Would you agree?
I agree. We are heading into the home stretch, and now we are moving on to Three Birds.
And I don't know what those 3 birds are, but
I don't either.
But for those of you who are just super fans of us, whenever I decided to take me and Matt through the Jack White Multiverse of Madness here, I had him pick between 2 numbers, 3 or 5, to determine what we would do first in terms of, like, the albums that we were going to discuss. He picked 5. We discussed the Raconteurs thanks to the song 5 on the 5. Well, this is the number 3 that was in that album there.
3 Birds.
3 Birds. So this is instrumental jam, and it works well. I thought initially, like, it's more of an interlude and a pivot point. But, I like the moments where, like, the track dips more into, like, more of a spacey jam session, especially led by Jack's performance smacking those toms. And the bass does a fantastic work in this track here. And, like, I just love the moments where, like, you get, like, those, like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But overall, there's not a whole lot here. It's not a bad track by any means, but it's still a solid track nonetheless.
I'm right there with you. I didn't, like, really have too much to say about this track either. I do like how the start of it grooves. Like, it is weird, like, after, like, 8 tracks, that this is the instrumental that they go with, because you're almost kind of half expecting Alison to say something, and then she just never does. And it's just like, oh, they're just going to do an instrumental on this track. But the groove for the majority of it is great. I really did like the outro on this quite a bit, because we were talking about on the Raconteurs episode where they had a couple of songs that flirted with, like, this sort of, like, mythic Old West type of vibe. And, like, we had not really heard that yet on this album per se, but this is, I feel, the part where it kind of comes in, like, that sort of, like, flamenco-esque outro that they have where they, kick things in a high gear a little bit. I like that quite a bit as well, but it did not land on my top 3, it did not land on my bottom 3. It's a Jack White instrumental. You pretty much know what you're going to get.
And I feel like whenever we discuss, like, instrumentals and our reviews here, and like even like interludes for like in a lot of the albums that we've looked at, neither one of us have basically been like two thumbs down. Like we basically acknowledge like this song is here for a purpose. It's not meant to stand out. It's meant to just. I feel like with this track here, it's supposed to highlight just the organic jam session-y nature of the Dead Weather as a whole. So yeah, overall pretty good, man. I can't complain about it.
Me neither.
So, you know what I'm really in the mood for, though?
What's that?
A no-hassle night.
A no-hassle night.
Yeah.
So, we have reached the penultimate track on this album. And we have, though. There was no joke. It was, I don't know why you did the badum-tush, but whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So, this song... it grooves well enough. I think the way that the band establishes it. I think Jack's drumming might be the most flashy it is on the album on this track, particularly with that intro where he's just kind of like, you know, ladies and gentlemen, without actually saying it. He just does it with the drums and guitar. Alison sounds fine, but I'm just going to come right out and say this is my second least favorite track on the album. And the reason is very simple. The wonderful production that we've been talking about this entire time, this is the misstep on the album. It is so overproduced and so overmodulated. And I know why they were trying to do this. They sort of want to almost get like a sort of like 90s grunge-ish vibe. Sort of like this Sonic Underground type of thing. And I respect the attempt. That's why I didn't put it at the bottom. But man, I just again, I feel like this feels like a song produced to come out of the wrong speaker no matter what speaker you use. Like, again, the vocals are, you know, just so overmodulated, and the band just sort of is going all over the place. It just feels like, I forget what song we were talking about with this in past reviews. Where it just felt like everything was pushed toward the front.
I think it might have been in the Pearl Jam.
It was in the Pearl Jam episode, but I think there was another one recently that kind of fell in that same category. I'm not sure if it was the Metallic episode or the one after that, but that's aside from the point. The point being is I just did not vibe with the production choice on this particular one. If they had produced it just like the other ones, I probably would have written it off as a solid song, but again, you know, whenever the vocals are sounding like this, you know, I can't.
So I'm always taken back by the way that you and I like approach like listening to music and like, you know, talking about music, because like it's very rare that I don't think I've ever talked about like, you know, production where like if it's pushed up front the way that you've discussed in this track here, and even like in the Pearl Jam episode, and like maybe like, you know, an hour from now we'll actually talk about the one track that you were trying to think of, because I can't think of it either. For me, the production here does not affect it at all. It's not my second favorite song on the album.
Shocker, the next one is.
Spoiler alert. But like I think the thing with the production that really I wasn't affected by was the fact that like I feel like with this track here that so like for a lot of the themes and the lyrics that we've explored throughout this album so far, we get like this themes of like toxic love, embracing Lucifer, and like really kind of digging into the deep depths of like, you know, human darkness. I feel like here, with lyrics of like, my baby, she's uptight, her face is frozen in daylight, my darling, she's a drifter, nothing out there seems to fit her, and like I feel like this song is trying to, like, you know, when you talk about like looking for a no hassle night, I feel like the one character actually committed a murder here, and he's trying to hide the body, and he's just looking for a place to go, and where the sun goes down, he can lie low, and like it's trying to really capture that feeling of like, oh, I've done this unspeakable act, and I've changed my life and like this other person's life forever. Well, I mean, their life is gone now, but like again, this might be me reaching too far into meanings with tracks, but like I feel like that's what kept this track up in the amazing track tier for me. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, you know, I agree with you, like, that big as shit opening where it's just, like, so pronounced with, like, you know, Jack White basically, like you alluded to, saying, hey, ladies and gentlemen, like, just smacking the shit out of the drums, like, I did appreciate what the track had to bring to the table. And I don't know. I didn't mind the menacing backdrop of the band and the way that everything was produced. Maybe on my next spin of the track and the LP as a whole, maybe my opinion might change a little bit, but who knows?
Yeah, no, I get that, and I do appreciate, you know, your lyrical depth, or, you know, again, because like we talked about before, where you sort of have this idea of, you know, what this song might mean to you and how this album sort of makes you think outside the box. Like, that's never a bad thing. And as far as, you know, for the sake of, you know, reaching too deep, I mean, we're doing a podcast. Like,
yeah.
like we're competing with people who do ayahuasca and, you know, talk about cats. You know, I think we're fine.
But yeah, overall though, like, I feel like this track here, No Hassle Night, does set up the final track on the album so well.
Yes, I can agree to that, because especially considering, you know, this is about, you know, trying to pivot out of, you know, doing something so foul, and the next song is about, you know, being out there and hoping, you know, you'll make it safe and sound in your next part of the destination. So with that, I hand it over to you for the final track on this album.
So, for those of you who are keeping score at home, and like Matt even alluded to, like, this is my second favorite song on the album, and it was hard. It was hard. This song could have smacked "Treat Me Like Your Mother" out of the top spot, because it's such a unique song in the way that it's recorded. Like, you really can picture yourself in Louisiana on a bayou, and you just see the dead weather, like, you know, floating down with a river, and just playing the song. And, like, or even if you're just embodying the character here, like, you know, you can imagine yourself just being, like, you know, on a river in Louisiana. I don't know why I'm stuck in Louisiana, but, you know, this is what it is. But, like, at night, and just, like, you know, just being completely exhausted with everything that's transpired in the events of this album, and just thinking about, like, you know, hey, is there going to be enough water when, like, you know, I hit land? And, like, whenever I want to, like, you know, move again, like, is there going to be enough air to, like, you know, move me in the right direction? And I love the use of those words and those, like, you know, just images, because you think about, like, water. Will there be enough water when my ship comes in? And water, like, you know, you think about the way that it's used in the world. It's used to clean stuff. Like, whenever you take a shower, like, you're cleaning the shit off of your body. I've cussed so much in this review. But, yeah, like, it's used as a way to clean. And you think about, like, how this album's basically had a human being go through, like, you know, a very dirty and very dark part of their soul. Like, at this point, they're trying to seek redemption. And I love that, man. And, like, even, like, using the use of, like, you know, when I set sail, will there be enough wind? Like, okay, when I want to move on to the next part of my life, is there going to be enough, like, natural force to, like, get me going where I need to go? Or is this basically going to be it? And I love the use of the lyric, just because you caught me doesn't make it a sin. Because, like, you know, hey, just because, you know, you caught me in the act of doing something, is that act a wrong thing to do? Because we live in a postmodern society where, like, you know, people can say, hey, Haitians are eating dogs. And also, like, whenever you try to refute that theory, it's just like, well, tell me that there's no evidence. Like, you know, I love how I drew that comparison there. But, like, outside of the lyrical, like, you know, depth there, the way that Jack and Alison sing together in this track is so good. And shout out to Vance Powell again. Like, he did a fantastic job recording this song here. And even to the point, like, at the very end, or, like, even throughout parts in this track, you can hear crickets in the background, which adds such an excellent texture for me. I'm always a huge, incredible nerd whenever songs do that. Like even like going outside like this band and this review as a whole, like another track that executed that to a T is at the end of Incubus's Morning View with the song Aqueous Transmissions, where like you can hear frogs in the background. Like it's really nice. I like moments like that. Overall though, this song is just so freaking good. Stick it to my guns though. Treat Me Like Your Mother. My favorite song on the album, but this is a close second. Maybe like a 1A, 1B kind of scenario.
I understand where you're coming from, and there is a lot of this track that I do like. It's not in my top 3 or bottom 3, obviously, that has been disclosed at this point. The way the band sounds is really, really good. I love the countryish vibe, again, sort of harkening back to the Raconteurs, because they did a lot of that on Console of the Lonely. Whereas here, like you say, the way the imagery of, being adrift, hoping that there's, land and wind and sea, and that, if I get caught, like you say, did I do the wrong thing after all? Like, yeah, you may say I did and throw me in prison or give me the death penalty, but I may say at the end of the day it was all worth it. But that being said, the one knock I have on this track, which kept it out of anywhere near the top 3 for me, because if it had been for one little change, I probably would have put it there. I didn't really like how the vocals were produced on this song or how they were executed. It's not that Jack White or Alison Mosshart sound bad. They don't. But I feel like the way that it was produced is sort of have like this echoey sort of underwater or on the sea type of vibe, like they're swimming. Like they could just very well be swimming in the middle of the ocean instead of being on a boat and just hoping for, a boat to come by and save them. While still carrying that ego of, hey, this was all a part of it's all part of the plan, I just felt like if they had just sort of recorded those normally and just made it, dry and very, sort of almost similar to the opening track off of, Dragon New War Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief, which is a change. If it sounded a little bit more like that, I think I would have bumped this track up probably into my top 3. They didn't, so I didn't. But I agree with you. This is a really good song and a really good album closer. And like you said, does a great job of tying things up thematically and also providing a little bit of a bit of intrigue for the listener to be like, oh, I wonder what the next part of this journey is going to be.
And for contextual sake, you know what that means, right?
I know what that means.
We did it, man.
We opened up the gates and let the Horehounds in.
All right, cool. That was not a smooth transition there, but I love how like we just worked it in there. So
this might honestly, just from a contextual standpoint, be our most unhinged episode that we've ever done.
Yeah, true.
And I'm all here for it.
So I'll go first in terms of my overall thoughts and ratings. So it was very interesting going back to this album for me, like, because considering that we reviewed the Consolos of the Lonely by the Raconteurs, you almost want to mentally compare the two albums, but they're not the same album by any means. Like, the Raconteurs' Consolos of the Lonely has Carolina drama, but, and also, like, it's a very, very produced album, and, like, everything's well thought out. Here, like, you have songs like 60 Feet Tall, Treat Me Like Your Mother, and Will There Be Enough Water, where things are just a little bit more organic. Treat Me Like Your Mother, you get, like, that's the slap you in your face song. Also, you get Hang You From the Heavens, but it's basically kind of like that too. And then you get other songs where it, like, relies more on the vocal performance and, like, the vocal grooves. And it is a foundational album for me. It came at a time when I was expanding my musical taste. And the chemistry that is displayed here within the band is, like, very good. I'm not going to rate it higher than the Consolos of the Lonely, because if I'm not mistaken, I gave that like a 9 or an 8.5 out of 10.
I want to say it was a 9.
Yeah, I would agree that it's a 9 too. For me, Horehound by the Dead Weather is a solid 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10. Okay. Yeah. That's honestly, considering all the things you said, that's a little lower than I was expecting. Like, it's probably the biggest plot twist since Hot Mulligan. So I thought you were going to give that one a 10 as well. It was like 8. I was like, oh, okay, all right. I am not quite as high on this album as you. Not that I hated it by any means. Like, if we are going to compare it to Console or Lonely, I did like that one a little bit better because I think, like you said, it was more well produced and sort of more polished to the bone. But I will agree with this one again. I think the lyrics, like you mentioned, elevate my thought process on this album quite a bit. And it so much so that I'm willing to revisit this album again in the future. But aside from that, though, like you said, the organic jam session vibe that carries throughout is sort of elevated by the lyrics that you said that Alison wrote a lot of on this track or on this album. And to me, that really does bump it up a little bit. I was going to give this a 7 out of 10 for just being a solid rock album through and through, but those lyrical components, I'm going to bump it up to a 7.5.
So that brings our collective score to a 7.75 out of 10.
Because math.
Math does work, everyone.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of a next album recommendation for me, at the very beginning of this review, I said like Horehound was their best album, and it's kind of, it might almost seem like a interesting choice for me to say, oh, hey, check out another Dead Weather album. But, you know, this is where we're at, and this is where my brain wanted to say. I originally was going to pivot and have the listeners go over to their 2015 album, Dodge and Burn. But after revisiting that album and then revisiting Sea of Cowards, which was released directly after this album here, I decided to go with Sea of Cowards. Like, you know, really that album dives more into, like, you know, the performance and the like in your face kind of nature moments that Horehound had. Some of the tracks are just more, they lean more into the vibes aspect as opposed to, like, you know, any sort of like lyrical, like, you know, deep diving that I can really do. Overall, though, it's a solid album, so if you enjoyed Horehound by the Dead Weather and you want to check out something in a similar vein, it's an easy recommendation for me to go to Sea of Cowards by the Dead Weather.
And for me, I decided to pivot a little bit in a different direction. Well, not too different, but different enough. Because I was kind of wondering what album to recommend myself. I had a little bit of a struggle. Like, I was thinking maybe I could recommend something along the lines of Consolo Lonely, or even something Zeppelin-esque, or maybe even something along the lines of Jack White's Fear of the Dawn, which I've recommended before. But it was around the middle of the album where I was like, okay, I kind of know what this album reminds me of. And it's an album we almost reviewed a few weeks ago, but we didn't because you chose Metallica. It is from 1999. It is called The Battle of Los Angeles by Rage Against the Machine. And much like this album, Horehound, that album just kind of grooves throughout in a way that really showcases the band's chops. And granted, obviously, you're going to have your political side of Zach De La Rocha's lyrics and vocals on the entirety album. But if you just enjoyed cranking this album up to 10 and just enjoying the grooves, you'll enjoy that album as well for the same reasons.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed it, after you enjoy Horehound by the Dead Weather, and you're looking for where else to go in your musical journey, check out The Battle of Los Angeles by the Rage Against the Machines, and also check out Sea of Cowards by the Dead Weather.
Yes.
Both excellent albums. I would probably say the Rage album's probably a little bit better, not to, like, you know, slam my recommendation down the toilet, but, you know. Still, like, you know, both solid albums in my opinion.
Agreed. So, I guess it's my turn, isn't it?
Yeah, man, it is. And I didn't give you a choice this time, man.
You did not give me a choice, so I, in turn, will do the same and not give you a choice on which album we're going to do next. And I think we may need a little bit of backup for this episode.
Okay.
Because for the first time, and I want to say maybe a month and a half, or maybe even longer than that, we are going to head right back to the time that we are living in, fortunately or otherwise, to 2024, and we are going to cover an album that some have called short and sweet. Maybe it's because of the runtime, maybe it's because of the pop elements, maybe it's just because that's the name of the damn album. The album is called Short and Sweet. It is by Sabrina Carpenter, and Ryan, I believe we're going to have a guest next time.
Yes, so we are going to be joined by the one, the only, the undisputed wife and of Ryan James Kearns. It's gonna be my wife, Jamie Dylan Kearns. She'll be joining us next time because she has thoughts and opinions about Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter.
You know what that means, right?
What?
We better come with some damn opinions of our own.
Yeah, so, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not checked out Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter, just do yourself a favor. Check it out. That way, whenever you check out the episode next week, which you will obviously do, you'll know what, me, Jamie, and Matt are talking about, and if you have opinions about our opinions, you can actually have structured opinions about our opinions, and yeah, it's an okay album. I listened to it, today, so,
Okay.
at least, on the first spin, I haven't, actually, taken any notes on it, but
Right.
I digress. Just make sure you check it out, that way you can enjoy next week's episode.
Absolutely. And as far as this episode, I enjoyed it myself. I'm glad you recommended Horehound. I appreciated it, and I'm glad to see that you appreciate it as well, because it would suck if you recommended an album you didn't like.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think... Yeah.
I know you're about to reference Pearl Jam. That's okay.
But yeah, well, I'm glad that this review is basically over. But sometimes I have questions, man, about stuff.
Like what?
Will there be enough water?
And if someone catches you, is it a sin?